Great. So I'm going to be talking about user-focused performance tracking. We're going to take a look at what is it, how do others do it, and then I'll really be talking about how Expensify does it. So quick intro for me. I was born and raised on a cattle ranch in Colorado. My first successful iPhone application, it's a real doozy. It was iFart. And it forever changed the when you upload an app and you have to follow their guidelines. They talk about fart apps in there specifically because of us. That was great. Been at Expensify for over 10 years. I initially brought React to our code base. It was our closed source code base at that point. And then when we started building our chat application, we did that open source and switched to React Native. I also built our state management tool, which is called Onyx. It's similar to Redux. So Expensify Chat, if you're not familiar with it, Expensify, our core product was an expense tracking application. So you could track your expenses, get reimbursed for them. And we wanted to grow that beyond just expense management. And so we developed it into a chat-focused tool. It allows you to talk with your manager, be able to organize all of your conversations around expenses. And so we built it with React Native. We originally built it just using JavaScript. And then with the help of Callstack, they migrated us to TypeScript, which was really great. We build it on all of these platforms, so web, mobile web, iOS, Android, and desktop. And then Callstack does a lot of our performance optimization. So we've worked with them for several years. Why are we talking about performance? Well, it's one of the top reasons that an app fills premium. And premium apps get the most viral growth. So it's the apps that you love using. It's the apps that you tell people about. And reputation matters. So, and then speed matters. You might be able to see our little Expensify logo here on Brad Pitt's chest. That's how much speed matters to us. We had to get into the F1 movie. So why focus on users? Well, users are the most impacted by performance. Users are your biggest stakeholder. If you don't have users, your app's not going to be it's not going to be worth a whole lot. Users can also be your biggest advocate. Make champions out of your users. If you make a champion user, that can be more valuable than a lot of marketing. So your champions will drive your word of mouth, the virality of the app, and loyalty. Keep them around for a long time. Let me tell you about a story. Once upon a time, we had an all-hands presentation, and a slide showed up that said, all user interactions under 100 milliseconds. That sounds great when the CEO says it. But when the director of engineering hears that, I have some questions. What's an interaction? It could be a button click, a form submitting. It could be something uploading. It could be navigation happening. This phrase wasn't very specific, so I wanted to have some more specifics there. Why did he say 100 milliseconds? I really think it was because it was on a slide where 100 was next to like several bullet points, and it just sounded good. It was nice and arbitrary. He doesn't know why 100 milliseconds. So I took the spirit of that, not the literal part of it. Why all of them? There's so many user interactions that happen in an application. And you think about combinations of interactions, there's billions of them. So why do we need to track all of them? What about animations? An animation can really cover up kind of performance gaps in your application. So the way that screens animate on top of another screen can mask like data loading. And then a lot of how. Didn't really know how I was going to accomplish this. So the first thing I thought is, well, we're not the first ones to have a React Native application, so we can't be the first ones that have run into this problem. But I really don't think that any big companies out there are really talking about how they track performance. I did a little bit of research and found an article by Shopify. So Shopify does some React Native development. And what Shopify does is they take all their components and they wrap it in something that measures the render time. This essentially doubles the size of the component tree. So it works great when your application looks like this, which is their test application from their article. But what about a component tree like this? This is our component tree. If you look at the little scroll bar over there, you can see it's just, scrolling, and we're barely even moving the scroll bar. So we have a pretty big component tree. I was not willing to pay the price of doubling that. Another article that I found was Coinbase. So Coinbase tracks a couple of key metrics. They track what they call the ARC, the App Render Complete, and the NTBT, Navigation Total Blocking Time. So they actually use a custom library with React Navigation to track when a navigation event occurs, and then once you have your TTI, your time to interaction for that view. They then couple that with their backend performance monitoring, and they end up with a graph something like this that they can track. We can see that there's an alert window, and depending on the size and the impact of that alert window will determine how they take action on it. I thought that was a pretty good approach. So we started doing something like that. But first, we need to talk about measuring what matters. And so this goes back to, why measure all of our interactions? I wasn't interested in measuring all the interactions. I was more worried about measuring the ones that mattered. So there's a couple rules that we follow. If it can't be measured, it doesn't matter. A lot of times, as an engineer, as a developer, you can look at a piece of code and think, oh, I know regex really well, and this regex is not very optimal. So I'm going to spend 3 hours optimizing this regex. Well, it just so happens that users never are impacted by that regex, and you just spend a lot of time making something faster that didn't need to be faster. Also, we as part of rule 1, we always want to make sure that our measurements are quantified. So just saying, oh, it feels faster, it feels slower, that doesn't really help us. So we want to translate that into it is faster or slower by X amount and make sure that we know what we're talking about. So rule 2, if a user can't notice it, it doesn't matter. Focus on the things that users are going to notice and that they're going to care about. Here's the things that we measure at Expensify. So we measure the time to open the application until it's ready for the user to use it. And then for each of these, we track the 50th percentile and the 90th percentile. We measure the time to open a chat from our left-hand navigation. So that's just the main navigation. We measure the time to open a chat from a chat preview. Time to open a chat from a thread. You can see that there's a pattern going here. So we really care about opening chats. In a chat application, that's typically the slowest interaction, and it's the one most important to the user. We also track the number of times that users see an error page. That's something that kind of goes unnoticed a lot. We have one generic error page for our application, and it gets hit a lot. Now that we're tracking this, it's actually interesting to see that there's cases where we just use a generic error page when something exists, but you don't have access to it. So we should probably show a you don't have access page instead of just a generic error. Something that we haven't done yet, but I'm really interested in doing is measuring and counting the length of time that our loading skeletons are shown. So I don't really care as much about a specific loading skeleton, but I do care about all of the loading skeletons. And if you can take a look at the time for all of the loading skeletons and decrease that number over time, the app's going to feel snappier to users. Tracking the measurements. Make sure that you're measuring things and tracking them before you go in and make changes. It's really easy to go in with assumptions, and you really shouldn't make assumptions because sometimes the data will surprise you. Be sure to measure things in segments. The segments that we measure things in is the environment. So we have a staging application, and then we have our production application. Measure it by version so that you can see as you roll out new versions how that changes. And then by platform. For us, we use StatsD, which is, it collects the data, and then Grafana, which is a charting UI that taps into all the data. So we can see here on top the number of error pages that happen. And then our open application, open report from the left-hand nav, open report from the preview. And then over there in little numbers, you can see the P90 and the P50. To make incremental progress, what we do is we do a report on these metrics weekly in our Slack channel. And when we started, we just reported the number for a couple weeks. After we got an idea of kind of what a baseline was, we agreed on some thresholds. And then anytime a metric goes below one of those thresholds, we open an issue for it. We get it assigned to someone. It gets investigated. They create a fix, deploy it, and then we repeat the entire process. This is Adam, and this is one of our weekly reports. So you can see he's reporting on staging here and production here. We've got green on all the P50s, so that's good, but we're red on all the P90s. We've got a lot of work to do, except for the one. And then lastly, I want to talk about the React Native Enterprise Framework, which I know they're going to talk about more tonight. This is really exciting for us. It's currently being implemented, and we're using it for remote builds. So it can take our build times from 25 minutes down to 7 seconds, 90% of the time. That's amazing. That means that we can make 174 more builds in the time it took to build one before. So faster builds means that we can fix performance problems quicker. It means that we can detect performance regressions in the PRs sooner. So having a GitHub action that runs on every PR that compares what's on main to what's in your PR and see if there was a performance regression. To wrap this up, focus your performance optimizations on the things that are measurable and that affect your users the most. Make sure to measure and track those metrics and then optimize them in quick iterations. Thank you very much.